The June 4th, 1956 edition of Sports Illustrated has an article titled "The Biggest Elephant Ever Killed by Man." It describes how in 1954, on the edge of a quiet lake in southeastern Angola, a footprint caught the attention of a man obsessed with size. It was an elephant's. There was no question about that, but its size defied belief. 3 feet wide, a full foot larger than the largest elephant track ever recorded. That record belonged to a bull elephant documented by Lawrence G. Thaw in the 10th edition of Roland Ward's Records of Big Game in 1935. Thaw's elephant measured 12 feet 2 inches at the shoulder, an astonishing height that stood as the benchmark for 2 decades. And now the hunter knew that what he was seeing exceeded it. He had stumbled upon a living legend. Joseph J. Fenykovi wasn't just a hunter. He was a post-war industrialist with a fascination for scale. Born in Hungary and later based in Spain, he made his fortune as an engineer and businessman before turning his attention to trophy hunting in Africa. With a 1,000-acre ranch in Angola and an insatiable appetite for collecting the world's biggest specimens, Fenykovi styled himself as both sportsman and explorer. His private trophy room was already filled with lions, rhinos, and mounted heads, but he was always looking for something bigger. But that day, he only had a small team and little equipment, so he left the track untouched. But the image burned itself into his memory. For the next year, back in Madrid, he couldn't stop thinking about it. A track that large could only mean one thing. The biggest land animal still walking the earth was out there. To track and kill a giant was once considered the pinnacle of human achievement. For centuries, European hunters traveled into sub-Saharan Africa, Asia, and the Americas under the banner of science, empire, or sport, depending on who was telling the story. Museums competed to mount the most exotic specimens. Colonial elites flaunted trophies in their drawing rooms, proof of man's dominion over the wild, and at the height of imperial expansion, hunting a large beast wasn't just an adventure, it was a statement of power. But by the 20th century, the meaning of such pursuits began to shift. Wildlife populations were in sharp decline, particularly Africa's Big Five. The lion, leopard, rhino, elephant, and giraffe drew thousands of hunters to Africa and would be pushed to the edge of extinction. In response, conservation movements were emerging. Even in Fenykovi's time, the practice of hunting for sport, especially big game, was beginning to feel out of step with the public mood. And yet, in the more remote corners of colonial Africa, the old code of the trophy hunter still thrived. In late 1955, Fenykovi returned to Angola armed to the teeth. With him, a reinforced expedition crew, 6 men, a heavy-duty power wagon, a jeep, food, rifles, and enough ammunition to hunt a small army. His longtime aide, Mario, was there, along with Antonio, a Spanish jack-of-all-trades, and 2 local trackers, Cucuya and Francisco. He took them straight to the lake. And there it was again, the same 3-foot print, dusty but visible. Nearby, fresh tracks suggested the elephant had returned only a day or 2 before. For Fenykovi, this confirmed what he had long believed. The solitary aging bulls followed routine paths, often returning to familiar water sources. The hunt was on. At dawn on November 13th, 1955, the men set out into the bush. They soon discovered that the enormous bull had been joined by another, nearly as big, but not quite. The 2 bulls traveled together, their tracks weaving in and out of the dense jungle. By 9 a.m., under a sweltering sun, the trackers saw movement ahead. The elephants were resting in the shade, calm, unaware. Using tree trunks for cover, Fenykovi crept within 80 yards. Mario lit a cigarette to test the wind. It blew across them, favorable for now. Fenykovi raised his .416 Rigby. He fired once. Dust flew off the elephant's flank. He fired again. Mario followed with a 3rd shot. The giants bolted. What followed was a 6-mile pursuit through dense jungle and baking heat. Fenykovi, aged 65, struggled to keep up. Mario and the trackers led the chase, following the blood trail. At one point, they split, the 2 elephants going in different directions. Now, it was a one-on-one pursuit. The final standoff came in thick brush. Mario, Cucuya, and Francisco crept in as Fenykovi waited by the jeep. Then, Gunshots, 4 in rapid succession, then silence, then more shots. When Kukuya finally emerged, he spoke one word. The elephant lay on its side, limbs splayed, blood pooled, the trees around it snapped like twigs. It had taken 16 bullets to bring it down, but Fenykovi had his prize. He measured everything. The elephant stood 13 feet 2 inches tall. It measured 33 feet from trunk to tail. The circumference of its feet was over 5 feet, a true world record. Its skin alone weighed over 2 tons, yet there was one surprise. The foot that had made the legendary track wasn't quite 3 feet wide. It was just over 2. Lodged in the elephant's foot was an old iron slug, perhaps fired decades earlier from a flintlock pistol. The wound had caused a limp, creating an illusion of larger tracks as one foot overlapped the other. Fenykovi returned home, but the elephant did not. He donated it to the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. In 1959, it was unveiled in the rotunda. Over the decades, however, the context around the elephant began to shift. Critics questioned why a museum devoted to science was showcasing a trophy kill by a colonial hunter. In 1999, the exhibit was reimagined with a savanna diorama, an attempt to restore dignity and ecological context. That too would later be removed. Today, the elephant still stands, but Fenykovi's name is gone. No plaque, no mention. The largest land animal ever killed by a human has outlived the man who pulled the trigger. Once a trophy, now a symbol.